Welcome to the Manage Self, Lead Others podcast. My name is Nina Sunday, and our interview today is geared for experienced and aspiring managers in the workplace. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Irena Yashin-Shaw, and she's been a thought leader, author and practitioner in the realm of innovation, creativity and intrapreneurialism. Long before they became workplace imperatives, which they definitely are now. She's on a mission to liberate underutilised talent within our workplace. And right now she's helping to spearhead the intrapreneurialism movement in Australia and beyond by founding the Global Intrapreneurs Institute. She's held a Global Intrapreneurs Summit, and she's founder and editor-in-chief of Intrapreneur Magazine. It is a true pleasure and honour to meet with you today, Dr. Irena. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Nina. And first of all, let me say a huge thank you for inviting me to be on your wonderful podcast and for just, giving me another channel by which to get these messages out. So very much appreciated. Delighted to be here.
Well, I've been following your progress over many years, and I've got a copy of your book, Intrapreneur, and I think the whole concept of intrapreneur, Seth Godin wrote the book Linchpin, which is in some respects touches on similar themes, and the whole idea of to gain energy and creativity within the workplace as a employed person within the workplace, as a way to for self-leadership and self-expression. I think it's a wonderful thing, but perhaps I really should ask you, what is an intrapreneur?
That's always a good starting point, especially because it surprises me, but that's because I live and breathe this 24/7, that many people haven't come across that term. Even now, there's been so much exposure around this topic, increasingly so over the last couple of years and certainly over the last few months. But the term entrepreneur is very well known, but intrapreneur less so. So to define that, to start with, essentially, it is someone who has that entrepreneurial bent, so that enterprising spirit, that desire to think and act like an entrepreneur, but while working inside an organization or a business or some enterprise, rather than taking that enterprising spirit and stepping out to start their own business. So in essence, it's someone who's an entrepreneur while working inside an organization. Very simple answer.
And is it important for organizations to keep their intrapreneurs so that they don't leave and start their own business?
Like, I can't even begin to say how important it is. That's really going to the heart of the reason why this whole intrapreneurialism movement is so important right now. I believe that intrapreneurs are the lifeblood of organizations, and especially as we start to come out of COVID and as organizations are beginning to look at how they're going to proceed and work and be and redesign and transform themselves in this new landscape that we find ourselves in post-COVID, the intrapreneurs in an organization are going to be probably the most important of all employees. So any business that's hoping to, remain relevant or grow their profile, be robust, bring a renewed energy into the marketplace, they are going to absolutely need their intrapreneurs, because it'll be the intrapreneurs who will facilitate all of that, because they are the ones who will find the problems to solve and figure out how to make that organization so much more viable and serve customers more effectively, do all the things that they need to do in order to be future ready.
Intrapreneurs are either the managers or the people that they lead. What are the attributes of an intrapreneur?
Great question, Nina. Intrapreneurs are often those employees who ask the difficult questions. So they're the ones who are likely to step up and challenge the status quo and say, why are we doing it this way? And they're the ones that are not satisfied with the answer, oh, because we've always done it this way. So these are the people who will see opportunities and will identify worthy problems that could be solved that aren't currently being looked at by the organization. So they'll often be identified, number one, by their question asking, and number two, by their desire to step up and do something. So they're not just the question askers, they're also the action takers. So they're sometimes referred to as the dreamers who do. So they're the people who can use their creativity to spot opportunities, but then they also take action on them. It's not like the case of, oh, I've come up with a great idea, now it's up to so-and-so to go ahead and progress it. But they're the people who are prepared to like roll their sleeves up and solve those problems. So I think the best way of finding them is to look for the people who ask lots of questions that move the organization forward.
Could it be that the ones that offer suggestions for improvement, is that an attribute?
Yes, yes,
And,
well
and
done.
so it's
Mm.
very important that those suggestions be harnessed in a way that the people making those suggestions feel like they will be actioned, because if people make suggestions and it goes nowhere, is that demotivating for people?
Yes, it's an interesting point because sometimes this whole suggestion issue can be a little bit fraught because on the one hand we want people to make suggestions, absolutely. On the other hand, if the suggestions don't align with the strategic goals of the organization, or they're so out of left field that people really can't see what the value in them are, then they're not likely to get picked up. And this is one of the things that intrapreneurs have to be very careful about, which is that they do understand the strategic direction of the organization very clearly, so that when they do make suggestions, it can look like they're actually suggestions that will add value to the organization. Because sometimes otherwise you know, and once again, there's no hard and fast answer to this, because sometimes those absolutely out of left field suggestions are the ones that cause the disruptive innovation and help the organization to operate at a horizon 3 level of innovation rather than just in continuous improvement. But the intrapreneur needs to do some groundwork if they're going to if they're going to make those completely out of the box, completely out of left field, very far reaching, disruptive suggestions. They need to do a lot of groundwork so that the people who hear that can be ready to hear that. So we want all kinds of suggestions coming through for an organization to be robust in the future. And those suggestions can be about continuous improvement, tactical improvement, strategic improvement, disruption. So it's very difficult to say on a blanket level that anyone who makes suggestions is necessarily going to be well received or not. They have to be very carefully considered.
Yes. When you work and consult with an organization, what processes do you suggest they build in to their culture to foster an intrapreneurial culture?
Okay. So it often starts with identifying the entrepreneurs. So I already mentioned before that one way of doing that is to, look for the people who are asking questions, and then, as you said, the people who are offering suggestions. And there are other ways too. You can profile your workforce, and I partner with a really wonderful organization in Silicon Valley called Swarm Vision, and they've got a wonderful profile that enables organizations to identify their entrepreneurs very clearly. So there are different ways of doing that.
Hmm.
So start with that, and then the next really important thing is to give people permission to experiment, permission to think differently, permission to use their creativity, permission to put their hand up and say, actually, I think we could do this in a different way or in a better way. And by doing so, not draw any criticism or ire of the powers that be, because if people make suggestions and they're just shot down, then they'll stop making suggestions. So that's part of the culture. It needs to be welcoming of people's ideas. Then I think it's really important to give people uh, some sort of support and education and training or upskilling or capacity building, because it's not fair to say to people, we want to be more innovative, go forth and innovate. And then it's like the deer caught in the headlights look. So there does need to be, I believe, some capacity building in order to help people learn the processes and the methodologies, and then give them a chance to experiment and give them a safe space where they can do things differently, where if things don't work out like they're supposed to, there's not this sense of, oh, you've failed. No. And then when they do it well, celebrate them and congratulate them and give people encouragement, and then other people will see what's happening and they'll go, oh, actually they experimented with something, it didn't work out like it was supposed to, but they were supported all the way through it. And then that over time builds that culture of intrapreneurialism, where people will begin to feel safe to make those suggestions and do things differently.
So I'm wondering if there's any, the top 3 ways to make sure that they can harness intrapreneurialism of their people. So, for example, making sure that most team meetings once a week, there's 5 minutes for idea generation, or do they put up a Kaizen board where people can actually post their suggestions there, or is it managers making sure they have one-on-one meetings with their staff at least once a month, so that they can ask? There might be some specific questions that you might recommend a manager asks a staff member if they're having a one-on-one meeting. So can you sort of speak to that? Like, what suggestions can you tell the managers that are listening in today?
Another great question.
This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
I think that the most important thing is, number one, to raise awareness around the concept of intrapreneurialism in whatever way available. Okay, so for example, you mentioned at the beginning when you introduced me that I've founded the Global Intrapreneurs Institute. Now, one of the things that we've just done, because we're still sort of in startup mode, but we've just launched a corporate offering. And that offering is a package of resources that's designed to be given to managers and leaders inside the organization to take and run with them as they see fit with their teams. So there's PowerPoint decks, there's notes, there's readings, there's videos, and we're just recommending that managers either spread them out over a series of meetings, so they actually do raise awareness around this concept, or they could do like a half day off-site where they take their teams away and really bed down the language around intrapreneurialism and what it means and how it can be unleashed. There's an assessment that managers can do to say, well, let's have a look at these 10 characteristics of intrapreneurial teams. How many of these things are we doing? What are we already doing well? Where could there be opportunity for improvement? So there are a number of ways of raising the awareness around this whole importance of intrapreneurialism, and we give managers the resources to be able to do that themselves internally without needing to necessarily bring someone in.
And the word intrapreneur, how well is that word received in the workplace? Do managers like the fact that they're calling themselves an intrapreneur, or do senior leaders go, "Who do you think you are, calling yourself an intrapreneur?" I mean, what's the language that people use if they don't use that word? And is that word well received, or is it judged in some way?
I think it's becoming increasingly well received. I mean, there's still a lot of people who who don't know what it is, as I alluded to at the beginning. But I guess if they're not calling themselves intrapreneurs, other language that they might use to refer to similar things would be change makers, innovation drivers, transformation champions, those sorts of titles that imply that someone is really in a very active way gearing themselves towards moving the organization forward. So there are different ways of referring to it, but I think we're going to hear more about the term intrapreneur. And I would really hope that there would be no senior leaders who would say, well, who do you think you are if you're calling yourself an intrapreneur? I would like to think that most senior leaders have got enough awareness, or at least desire to see the organization move forward, to at least try to find out what that is if they're not sure.
That's right. Yeah. I guess it depends on your own internal temperament, how well you resonate with this whole concept of pouring your creativity into innovation, because it really is an internal drive, an internal motivation, isn't it?
It very much is. And you'll find that intrapreneurs are those people who just bring their passion to work. Like, they are just passionate about doing things better. It's almost like they can't help themselves. So they see a problem and they'll go, I think I've got a better way of doing it than that, or I think I can fix it. And very often intrapreneurs will use a huge amount of discretionary effort in making things better that aren't even necessarily part of their own remit. It may not be part of their core work that they need to do, but they see a way of making something better, and then they'll go to other people, collaborate with them, but they'll pour their heart and soul into something. And the other thing that they sometimes do, which pays off, is what we'll call job crafting. So someone who is really passionate about something, they might find themselves over time being able to move into a particular space where they can do more of what they're passionate about, and the organization kind of adapts with them and towards them and leans in a bit.
That's fantastic. I'm a great believer in that. And I didn't know the word, but I've done job crafting with different staff that worked for me. We might do a little list of all their tasks, and I'll say, if there's one task on this list that you least want to do, what is it? And then I would think about that and go, well, you know what? Why don't I see if one other person in the organization would like to take it on? And is there one thing that you like to do more of? And so we just kind of worked out that she could do more of the thing that she liked and less of the things that she disliked. And it was easy to pass it on, because not everybody dislikes the same things.
Absolutely. Well, I was just going to say, you were probably everyone's dream leader
Oh, thank you.
to have that conversation.
Yeah, well, just see, for me, it's empathy. I put myself in their shoes, because you see, I remember when I had a job in television and I was stuck in as a number cruncher doing the budget, and I'd found a mentor somewhere else in the organization to get a creative role, to be in the director's seat. And I was due to actually do the 6-week production course. I mean, I was already a graduate of the film school, a 6-week production course, so I could do that within the organization. And then when I followed up, he said, oh, no, it won't be for another year. They've cut our budget. And I went, bye. I'm finding a job where I can be creative, and I went self-employed.
Yes.
So I was an intrapreneur.
Yes,
that
exactly.
jumped ship.
Yep. Absolutely. And this is why you really understand this concept so well, because that you've actually had a lived experience with that, which might have been what prompted you to ask me the question before about, what should organizations do to make sure that they keep their entrepreneurs and their internal entrepreneurs, which are the intrapreneurs. And you've just given a beautiful example of what they should do, which is, as much as possible, tap into the passion of their people. When people are passionate about something, they will just pour their heart and soul into it and go above and beyond the call of duty, because they love what they're doing. And it's the wise organization that will find ways of being able to really harness that. So I love that story that you've just told.
In your book, you talk about the various types of combining energy with self-leadership. And I really would like a bit of a definition of what is self-leadership. I mean, we call this podcast Manage Self because it's based on the concept of self-leadership. But how do you define it, Irena?
So for me, self-leadership is that capacity to tap into our skills and talents in a way that brings value to the organization. So it's different if you've just got an idea but do nothing about it. I think that's a lack of self-leadership. Whereas if you've got an idea and then you can set yourself some goals and you're prepared to do whatever needs to be done in order to bring those ideas to fruition. So that often means that we need to exercise a fair bit of self-discipline. We need to sometimes step out of our comfort zone to do things differently. We often need to network and collaborate with other people, have conversations that might be a little bit uncomfortable. So there's all those things that challenge us to step up and level up and really get ourselves into that sense of growth, that growth orientation space. I think a lot of that has to do with self leadership, as well as being prepared to reflect on our skills, where our gaps are, where our strengths are, understanding what we're good at, where we need help. It's all of that great area of awareness of ourselves and what really drives us, what doesn't drive us, what we are prepared to do, where the lines are. So it's very much about self-knowledge and that capacity to act on our ideas in a growth way. Because this podcast is for managers and aspiring managers, I believe one of the greatest gifts that a manager can give to their team is to nurture and steward people into that space where they do reflect. So when they do have one-on-ones with their team members, asking the kinds of questions that prompt them into self-reflection. You know, what worked, what didn't work, what have you done recently that was really successful, why was that so? What's happened that didn't deliver the results that you were hoping for, why was that so? What would you do differently next time round? You know, those sorts of questions that actually prompt the team members into doing that sort of sense of self-interrogation, where they look at themselves without the rose-colored glasses and are really honest and find out what does and doesn't work for them. That's one of the greatest gifts that a great manager can do for their team, to really be almost like a talent curator, you know, helping all their team members to be represented in the best possible light through this process of heightened self-awareness.
That's fabulous, Irena. Well, we could talk for another half hour, but we're sort of coming to a close. Just to finish off, where will people find Intrapreneur Magazine?
So if you just go to intrapreneurmagazine.com,
Yes,
you'll find it.
And I was at your book launch, and it wasn't too long ago. So, is there another book on the way, or this is it for the time being?
There is definitely, in fact, there's another 2 books on the way. I toggle between the 2 of them when I'm writing, but the one that's specifically related to intrapreneurialism is going to be taking a much deeper dive into the qualities of intrapreneurs. We only just barely touched on that in a previous question that you asked me, and I didn't really take a deep dive into it then, but it will be about what is it that defines an intrapreneur, and I list out 12 qualities, and we look at how intrapreneurs demonstrate those qualities. So there is another book on the way. I would like to think it'll be out this year.
I've had an educated friend of mine say, in a sense, because of COVID and the recovery after COVID, we need managers and leaders to think that in the next quarter, we've got to achieve what we would in the past have achieved in a year. So in the next year, we really have to aim to achieve what we would have achieved in 4 years, because workplace ecosystems have been smashed
Yes.
Some people are leaving jobs never to return to those jobs, even when the need is there. So
Yes.
we're going to have to gear up and train up new people that in a shorter amount of time, as Buckminster Fuller says, do more with less in less time, do more with less. So
Yeah.
we're just going to
Yeah.
have to do things faster and faster and go
Yeah.
further, quicker.
Yeah. Nina, and the only way that's going to happen is if organizations take some of that bureaucratic harnessing off employees and allow their energy and creativity to come to the fore, because that's the only way they're going to move really fast. If they're still dependent on the outdated chain of command of everything's got to go through the layers of bureaucracy, that's going to slow things down so much that they will not be able to move at the speed that they are going to need to move in order to stay relevant in this super VUCA world that we're living in. And the only way to do that is
All right.
to just unleash your intrapreneurs. Let them be part of the journey, contribute their ideas, bring their perspectives, bring their energy, let them take action. That's the way that organizations are going to, re-energize themselves in order to last the distance for this very, very uncertain future.
Well, let's finish off with both of us saying that what the four letters of VUCA stand for. It stands for the world is
Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Yes.
Welcome to the Super VUCA world. Thank you so much, Dr. Irena. It's been a true pleasure.
Oh, what a lovely joy to be with you. Thank you, Nina. It's been a delight.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.